What's happening, everybody? Thank you for being here at All Access Live with Kevin Rankin. I want to make sure that you guys know if you're coming here anywhere else other than YouTube, do me a favor, go to the link below, go to youtube.com/@accesskevin. You'll be able to subscribe to the channel. You can become a member if you so choose. Make sure that you hit the bell and you'll be notified about upcoming events that I have. And if you do become a member, you've got access to exclusive interviews that I've done with people like Midjur from Ultravox, Cy Kernan from The Fix, a new one I just did with Kelly Keegi from Night Ranger at his place in Phoenix. And you'll also get some swag packs and some other stuff, so you'll be entered into drawings. Just make sure that you join and let me know. I'd appreciate it. Also, I want to thank an amazing new sponsor, a great organization in Portland, Oregon, the longest running and greatest record store on the planet, Music Millennium. MusicMillennium.com. You'll be able to order online. If you're in the Portland, Oregon area, you can get the greatest selection of vinyl. They just have a good selection of new material from Record Store Day. And they've been around for over 55 years and have been a big supporter of Dan Reed and the Dan Reed Network. So speaking of Dan Reed, I've got him in town, man, a rare occasion to be able to get this gentleman from across the pond. So with no further ado, Dan Reed, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Kev. Good to see you.
It's great to see you too, man. I love the backdrop. You're in a very secluded and private studio.
I'm in a 1970s Charlton Heston movie.
Does it feel like that?
Yeah, it feels like a Soylent Green apartment.
Well, I would imagine that not only does the experience there in the studio feel like that, but your compadre that's running the show probably makes you feel that way too. So
yeah, well, this is a studio here in Portland called Commune, which is run by Rob Dacre, and we've been blessed to work with him over a number of years. And we were in here. Do you remember what this place was called before Rob had it?
Yeah, it was Dan Decker had it. It was Sound Impressions, right?
Sound Impressions, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So I recorded here once a long time ago too. Before that.
Yeah. Did you do your first solo record out of that place originally?
Oof. You're talking about Breathless?
Yeah.
That album? No, we didn't record that here. I think we recorded that over on Hawthorne, and that studio that was next to what was the music store there on Hawthorne? 30th.
Yeah. Oh my God.
A great guy that ran it too. I can't remember anything.
Yeah. I just before they closed down, actually, I rehearsed there with Jennifer Batman, that really cool studio in the back.
Exactly. And they had a recording studio that was next to it up on Hawthorne, closer to 39th or whatever,
Well, hopefully people in the chat will remind me, and I can't believe
they're going to remind me too. It's ridiculous.
But
I'm 61 now, so everything's going.
Yeah, buddy. Man, well, if you're like me, dude, COVID did a lot more of that to my brain. I'm going to blame it on COVID and not the age, but there's memory and like sort of facial recognition. I used to be really good at remembering names, and a lot of that's gone away. And I think it's just, and I never even got COVID. So I think it's just fog in the brain, but.
Well, I've never been good at it, and I've had COVID 3 times. So.
Really, man.
I'm still not good at it.
That sucks. You've got a super fan out there, Andrew Gilling, man. Thank you for supporting the show here.
Hi, Andrew.
And Jules Carley has been a huge support of the Dan Reed Network here.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to see you here too, Jules.
Jules is on right now. It's late over there. I think it's quite late.
Yeah. Jules was actually she was pimping the no, Kathleen, it's not Music Millennium. That's an amazing music store. They supported the show. But no, there was a place that sold music equipment around 30th and Hawthorne. And they had the recording studio right next door. Oh my God, it's going to drive me nuts. But anyway, you know what? The studio you're in now at Commune. Yeah. So Rob was a huge fan of Dan Reed Network way back. Like I got to know him when he was doing his solo stuff in '94.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember Rob's material sounded a lot like, he'd taken a little bit of influence from the Dan Reed Network back in the day. And actually, Dan Reed Network and this guy right here, my favorite artist. So
of course.
Rob was a big Prince fan.
We're all, who's not, everybody's a big Prince fan.
Yeah, buddy. It's I was in New Mexico last year, and I went in and did the Zia symbol tat with the Prince symbol in it.
You did?
And I went to the tribe, the Zia tribe there in New Mexico, to say, I'm going to appropriate your logo and I know that it's already been done inappropriately, so I want to be able to donate a little bit.
Mm,
And I showed them the design, and they asked about the Prince symbol in the middle and what the significance was to me.
mm,
And they were so cool about the right use to it. I donated a couple $100 to the tribe because New
nice.
Mexico actually they took the logo and didn't even ask from the tribe, and so I at least wanted to give a little bit. And he said, "Yeah, we'll take your money, but everybody on the planet has taken our logo without asking." So,
Oh,
but,
wow.
but anyway, enough about Prince, man.
Oh,
Let's talk about why you're here right now. You're in the commune in Portland, Oregon, to work
yeah.
on a new record.
Yep. New DRN record that we've been writing over the course of maybe a year and a half. Brian down in Honduras has been sending tracks over to me in Prague. Rob's sending me some tracks, and cutting them up, turning them into some kind of arrangements, and trying to make some commentary about what's going on in the world right now. So it's a little more pointed, this record, a little
Okay.
more maybe angry. I don't know about
Yeah.
angry. I don't know if it's anger, uh, frustration.
There's some
That
emotion in it.
Yeah, and it's kind of like we're so conflicted now, as a human race between left and right, of course, but also,
Yeah.
um, whether we're more racist now than we were 50 years ago, or did we get better, but we're complaining about it more? Like, what's the truth?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know. I don't know the truth, because if you listen to the left, there's one truth over there, and if you listen to the right, there's one truth over there, right? So it's kind of like riding the wave in between, the
Yeah.
decimal point between 1 and 0, and trying to make sense of it all is what this record, I guess, is going to be about. And
It's funny to think about how mature that writing has become. When you think about back in the days of Tiger in the Dress and, Get to You, you
well,
know?
Tiger in a Dress was about a real woman up in Seattle, and it's like we don't do those kind of antics anymore.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Right.
why would I write about that anymore? It's kind of but yeah, she was a tiger.
Nice. Yeah. I, Carla actually, no, she nailed it. It was showcase music. That was the spot that was on Hawthorne.
Showcase,
Yes.
absolutely.
Thank you, Carla. Right on. Yeah, man. And TC was the owner, right? TC and his dad owned the place. So, yeah.
And his father.
Yep, TC's father, I think, ran that
Yeah, I'm
place.
trying to think of his father's name. He's a friend too. It's just like I'm literally losing my brain cells the older I get. I'm telling you.
Well, you've been in Prague for like 14 years, right? So you've been overseas and
13, yeah.
13.
Yeah.
Um, for the people that are catching this that don't know a little bit about the Dan Reed history, right?
Mm,
We don't have to go through the entire timeline, but I think it's kind of fascinating that you took this kid from small town South Dakota, right, and you migrated out to Portland, and as you know, I mean, Dan Pred's dear friend of mine. You want to talk a little bit about what brought you guys from there to Portland?
yeah, well, first though, I started off in Portland, because I was born in Portland. And then
Okay,
I went to Christ the King grade school right by LaSalle High School.
okay,
And the nuns were brutal, man. So
yeah,
I learned early on that Jesus cracks a wicked whip.
yeah.
and but
Were you an altar boy?
say what?
Were you an altar boy early on?
I was, for sure.
I was too, man. That's interesting. Okay,
And then I
all
was
right.
like, I liked that, the priesthood, and I thought about how cool it was to be up there and talk about these really high ideals, and people would come and listen to it and stuff. And then when I learned you can do that through rock and roll with less high ideals, I chose that path. And then when we came back to music, it's trying to like go back to the higher ideals, but without preaching about it. Like nobody
Yeah,
likes a soapbox, and it's like just infer and point the light on something that's very hypocritical, or you know
yeah.
that's the goal now, and laugh about it a little bit, but also if you feel like crying, then it's definitely plenty of stuff in the world going on worth crying about.
Amen. Yeah, buddy. So you started here, then you went to South Dakota, like
And then my mother remarried when I was 4 or 5, and it took her a few more years to get out of the country, or not out of the country, out of the state, which
okay,
Oregon could be considered its own country.
right,
Um, but out of the state to South Dakota. And then I went to school there from 4th grade to when I graduated from high school.
okay,
And then that's where I met Dan Pred. We want to talk about Dan.
Yeah.
I met him at a music store, and I think I was 15, he was 14. We were both big Rush fans, and I think AC/DC had just come out, and Kiss, of course. We were way into
Yeah.
Kiss. Cheap Trick, I think Cheap Trick was out.
Okay.
The Doobie Brothers, this kind of stuff. And we hit it off right away and started playing. We used to play 2112 at proms
Oh my God! Really, in South Dakota?
in South Dakota, and you just saw the hate. It was like
Right.
it was like the puppet show in Spinal Tap.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, you're exposing these guys to some good culture, though.
Yeah,
'Cause
right.
I
But
grew
there,
up in Montana. Rush was kind of like, Montana was kind of Canada South, and
yeah,
Rush was,
yeah.
it was sort of it was iconic for
But
that
if you want
area.
to slow dance with the girl you've had a crush on all year, you just don't.
Well, oh, that's a perfect thing because you got a 21-minute song that you can dance to, right? So but it's hard to dance to odd meter for sure,
You
man.
could do like 21 dances to it.
That's that, man.
It's
And
funny.
what was the fire that lit you to go back out to Portland then?
Well, other than Lawrence Welk, it was really hard to make it out of South Dakota.
Yeah.
Cheryl Ladd, she was a South Dakota girl.
I didn't know that. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Look who's here in the chat. Dan Pred. He said it wasn't prog rock. It was prom rock. Nice.
Prom rock.
Nice, Dan. Yeah.
He
Good
remembers.
stuff. I'm glad here. He's actually on a video shoot right now and like chatting in through from
Yeah, he's
somewhere
up
on
in
site. So
Washington, up in Washington, yeah.
that's right, man. But yeah, okay. So Cheryl Ladd and Lawrence Welk were making
I
it
was
big in
just
South
saying,
Dakota.
yeah, I figure that moving back to Portland and starting a rock band over here would make more sense, you know.
Well, before you left for South Dakota, had you gotten to know other Portland musicians like the Jamie St. James and the Tommy Thayers of the world?
No, I was like 7 years old when we left, 8 years
Okay.
old when we left Portland, and then when I came back though, I was 19 years old and got snuck into different clubs and stuff to see Sequel and
Yeah.
No Ties, bands like
Wow.
this.
Was New Shoes happening then?
No, I think they were just starting, but there was Quarter Flash, of course.
Quarter Flash, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
And then what was it, Jody's and Copper Penny,
Was Nimble Darts? Is that because that was an early time for you? That was an early music gig for you, right?
That was my first band playing in Portland. Was
And
playing some keyboards and guitar on the side and singing some background vocals and stuff. But then
was Robert as crazy then?
Yeah, Robert was always
All
crazy.
right.
That's what I liked
All
about
right.
him. He was nutty,
Yeah.
and that's what made him him. But Lori
Right.
Calhoun was amazing. Of course, Albie on drums.
Right. Albie. Yeah.
And that was it really kind of taught me a lot about the music scene. It's the first time I got ever drunk in my life was with that band on my 21st
Oh,
birthday.
really?
21st
Okay.
birthday, yeah. Yeah.
That and so all right. So you mentioned playing keys and singing backups for Nimble Darts. How did you and Dan Pred sort of formulate a new project then?
Well, that was, Dan was a year behind me in school. So I
Okay.
came out here a year before him. And then I think it took him a little time to get over here. But after he graduated from high school, when he did get out here, he was working a fast food joint. I worked a fast food joint in Aberdeen, South Dakota. I did Burger King. He did Arby's, if I remember correctly. And he worked at the Clackamas Town Center in Arby's. And I was living up on the side of Mount Scott. And my dad sold the farm and they sold their properties in South Dakota and came out here about a year and a half after I did.
Okay.
And so then the whole family was out here. And then Dan Pred came out and then we were playing. We had some stuff. We were working on some songs, some demos. Worked with this guy named Chris. Can't remember his last name right now. I think he had a studio called Northeast Studios or Northwood Studios.
It's actually pretty impressive that you remember, the guy that was recording the stuff. But
something, yeah. Very little though. I don't remember it all.
Yeah, well,
I blame marijuana.
Yeah, well, Yeah. There's all sorts of stuff we can blame, but
Yeah, exactly.
uh,
I blame my
but you
second grade
you
teacher.
know, from the well, you were an altar boy, man. I mean, Catholic school. I blame
I blame
Catholic school for most of
Jesus.
this stuff. I don't blame Jesus. I blame everything else that went along with Catholic school, though. But
It's the Romans'
man,
fault.
that's right.
Everyone
I
wants to say the Jews killed Jesus now. It's like, no, it was the Romans' fault. The
that
Jews didn't like Jesus, but
Dan Pred says it's Recording Associates. That's where you
that's
yeah.
exactly right.
This-
And ask
yeah.
him his name is Chris something.
All right. Well, Dan Pred seems to have a decent memory here, and yeah. Look what we found in the chat. It says there's too much going on. You're right, man. I get ADD when I talk to Dan. So and I think you might know this, Dan Reed.
We were
I've
just
told
talking
you
about
this.
this today. Yeah, go, keep going. Please.
I grew up in Montana, huge fan of the network, but a lot of guys, I was playing in cover bands, and we would cover Dan Reed Network stuff. And a lot of the college crowd there didn't know the network. So bands were just breaking, bands like Extreme and we were covering Make It Easy. We were covering Slam. We covered we called our band Slam. And
really
everybody thought that Make It Easy was one of our own tunes, so we just called it our own. But
in the wrong
there it is.
Yeah,
yeah, guys. So if you guys just got here, you're gonna get to see some Dan play some of this stuff, and I probably can't talk him into doing Slam or Make It Easy.
Early in the morning. Yeah.
Sat up on the roof. Yeah, buddy. That video is so good too, man.
And the sun was boring compared to you.
That's beautiful, man. I love this. When so you and Pred, you had Recording Associates, you put that together. Was it just you two working on demos, or was it?
Yeah, we did like 2 or 3 songs, something like that. And then I was playing with Nimble Darts. And then we found that we were working with a bass player named Ed Burns for a while. And then what was Dan Pred's gonna know? And then Jeff Seary, who I knew from grade school before I moved to South Dakota. We weren't musicians back then because we were just little kids. But when I moved back to Portland, he happened to be a guitar player. And we had got reconnected. And he was the first guitar player, keyboard player in the network.
Okay. Had you actually called it the network at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Dan Reed Network was Jeff Seary's brother, I think also named Chris. Well, I know he had a brother named Chris, but his other brother that ran the printing shop. God, I'm losing my brain cells. But we did this newsletter that I got a job at the printing shop, Jeff Seary's brother's printing shop. And we got a really good deal on making like newsletters and stuff. And that was the original called Dan Reed Network, was just a mailing list.
Okay.
And then when it came time to name the band, I started that mailing list when I was working with Nimble Darts.
Were you gigging at that point when you actually had a mailing list, or were you just trying to build a
with Nimble Darts? With Nimble Darts.
Okay. But I mean, not the network though.
No. So when it came time for the network's first show, we already had like 400 people on a mailing list.
Nice.
And then it was, I think, I don't remember which band member. We had a list, like fucking notepad of different band names, Yeah. And then somebody in the band said, why don't we just call it after the newsletter? And I was a fan of the Jimi Hendrix Experience. I thought that was a cool band name, right? Yeah. And at that time, when we put the band together, I was writing most of the lyrics, and I was like, chord changes, but then the other guys made it what it was, the sound, right? But I was writing the majority of the stuff at that time, I would say. And so when the Dan Reed Network came up as the name, it was like, okay, my ego was like, that sounds so good to me, right? But if I had to do it all over again, I would have chosen a different path for sure.
Would you?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you felt like it was too self-absorbed to have your own name as part of the
Now I would call the band like, are polar bears stronger than alligators?
They are.
But are they?
Man. Yeah, well, you rarely see them, in battle. But
dude, I saw a leopard. I saw a video of a leopard jumping into the swamp, tackling an alligator in its own territory in the water. dragging it up on land. Like, that
Yeah.
takes some
And the leopard, it won that battle.
totally.
Wow, that's
The
crazy,
alligator
man.
is on its back on the beach going, "Help me, Lord." It's like,
Wow.
and
Yeah, man.
the leopard's got his bite right around his neck, like, you ain't going nowhere.
That's yeah. I
It's
guess when you get
intense.
hungry enough, man. Yeah. The band name thing, the self-titled band name thing. I just
Yeah,
listened to the podcast with John Bon Jovi, and
yeah.
it was really funny. The Smart List podcast, Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and
Oh
Sean,
wow, I love Jason Bateman.
amazing. I mean, it's a really killer podcast.
All right,
But the
that's
funny
cool.
thing is, Sean, there's a guy who does Broadway and he's a great actor. He said, John, what kind of name is Bon Jovi? And he was wondering why, like where the name came from.
Yes,
And
that's
they
last
talked a little bit about sort of a combination of his last name and something that's a little bit more palatable. But um, I thought it was really interesting in that conversation. John's doing a press junket right now because he's got a new Hulu documentary that came out,
Okay.
and a lot of people that know his history, right? He's really struggled the last couple of years. He had vocal surgery,
I
and
heard something about that. Yeah.
so instead of like nodes on his throat, he actually had to have a vocal cord reassembled. I think they used rubber as like a vocal cord that they like surgically implanted in his throat, and he's had years, like 2 years or 3 years of rehab that he's been working on.
Wow.
And I was going to ask you about that, about when you get up to an older, sort of like an old, when I say older in rock and roll terms, 40, 50, 60,
Yeah,
at a
yeah.
point where your voice changes so much. Did you ever go through one of those phases? Because you've really, even if you took a hiatus from like network gigs, you've still continued to play forever, right?
Yeah, but there was such a long break for me not singing every year like, John Bon Jovi did. Those guys were like touring every year,
Right.
right? For like
Yeah,
15 years, they did it straight. We did
Yeah.
it for like 3 years once we got our deal, 3 or 4 years, and then break. So I had
Right.
all those years of not like beating the hell out of my throat.
Okay.
So, Eric Martin is one of my favorite singers in the world.
Me too.
And just to hear him struggling a little bit, I know it's because he's just been fucking rocking the world for so
Yeah.
long, night
Right.
after night after night, and a lot of us, to kind of be able to, what do you call it? Deal with the travel and not having a home life and kind of, playing the same songs every night and finding new inspiration for it and hanging out with people afterwards and hearing comments and being inspired by all that, and then having drinks with friends, and it just becomes this kind of world where you stay up too late, you talk too much, and then you got to sing the next night, and it can beat the shit out of your throat if you're not careful. And rock and roll has always kind of like been suggestive to partying,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Right. Comes in the territory.
That's what they say.
Yeah.
And yeah, it can ruin your throat, ruin your voice for sure, among other things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in your phases of time, because I look at the Dan Reed story and you got a lot of distinctive chapters, right? I mean, I think about, pre-network, you got the network that was a big span of your life. When I first moved to Portland, it was 94. The network had just kind of come to an end, right?
When you first moved here, we were just finishing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was so sad because I was such a big fan of the network, and I was asking around. I went to Super Digital, I think, or Super Duper at that point, and I was going to go get CDs made of the band that I was in. And I asked the guys at the counter, man, what happened to like my favorite band, Dan Reed Network? And the guy said, well, drummer's right here. And
Oh,
he was
shit.
working a day job, and he cut his hair, and I freaked out. I was like, no, man, no. And I, in my mind, this kid from Montana, I came out, I was a big fan of the band. I knew that you guys had toured with Bon Jovi and toured with the Stones. And in my mind, right, I equated success with all those things with there's no way anybody ever has to work a day job again, right? And not only that, but he certainly would never cut his hair, because that's permanent rock and roll. But
I can see where you got your brain flipped there a little bit.
Yeah, that was tough, man. But
you should have seen me cleaning up trash in front of the nightclub, because I got in trouble with the police and broke a window in my own nightclub that I co-owned with some friends, and
This is that was the next chapter. So yeah, this is Ohm you're talking about?
Yeah, and then when you have to do like, public service, and
Yeah.
I'm sweeping the streets in front of the same club I just broke a window out of last week.
All right. So tell me the story of the broken window as I fix my
Oh,
camera.
I mean, I think when you're in that kind of environment, a nightclub environment, and especially the Ohm, I don't know if you came down there much, but it was like pretty much the party of the town, right? Yeah. For a while there. There's a lot of people that are your best friend, and you don't know who's for real and who's for not. And so one night I just the kettle blew up, and I was just like not sure who was who, including myself.
Yeah.
And somebody said something about chilling out, and I said, "Oh, you want me to chill out? I'll show you chilled out." And I threw a chair through the front window.
Oh my God.
It was 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning though, so I was pretty sure in my mind there was no fucking, no families, no children walking outside at that time of night.
Oh, really? That actually went through your mind?
Of course, yeah. As I'm swinging the chair.
That's right.
Otherwise, I would have went, "God!" and just stopped with the chair. But I was like, "Nope, it's going through. I'm going to risk it all." And if there was oh God, I would gladly spend the rest of my life in jail or accept a death sentence.
Yeah.
You know what I liked about? There's a story about Gandhi, because he was an attorney, right? And there's a story about how he would only represent people if they were willing to admit their guilt, because he thought he could get them a better deal. Like if you confess and you're genuinely, apologetic and you regret your transgressions, so then I can probably get you like a good deal, you'll have to do 6 months or something, right? But if you pretend you're not guilty, I can't represent you.
That's beautiful.
How much
accountability?
How many attorneys are like that anymore?
Yeah, no, I mean,
must be a minority.
Well, yeah, I think every attorney sort of knows that their client more often than not, is guilty and is going to deny guilt.
Well, if you're guilty and deny it, that's just like, not guilty, Your Honor, but you did kill them. Well, I killed him.
Right. But he was in the way and I didn't. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of accountability. And, you mentioned actually, and that's another chapter actually. So after the network broke up, I knew that there was some time that you spent with the Dalai Lama, right?
Yeah. Well, that was before and after.
Okay. How did that come to be?
Well, the Dalai Lama interview was before. That was 1992 in northern India, up in Dharamsala. For Spin magazine, but that was the impetus for me wanting to go back many years later. But that was after the nightclub scene, right? So the inspiration for wanting to go to India later was before all the drugs and alcohol and party nightlife and all that stuff. But it was cool. It was great to see. I thought what you would call the rave scene and the rock scene and hip hop scene and drum and bass scene, all this kind of stuff kind of, melting together at the Ohm was, I thought, quite inspiring for a nightclub,
Yeah. Well, the Dalai Lama experience, if you mentioned that you went and did the interview for Spin.
Yeah.
What had you known about the Dalai Lama before you got there?
Well, he was kind of our living Gandhi. He was the closest thing to Jesus and all these other kind of characters that were really promoting this energy on the planet. And he was still alive. And I made a bet with the owner of Spin magazine, the publisher, that I thought the Dalai Lama was more rock and roll than, let's say U2 or something that had a really big message, right? And he says, "Well, I'll tell you what, you get an interview at the Dalai Lama, I'll put him on the cover." That was the bet.
Really?
Yeah. So
there
was a Tibetan gentleman here in Portland, Oregon named Jigme Tapagul, and he used to live in Tibet, and he then escaped over the mountains into Dharamsala with His Holiness back in the day, and he ended up here in Portland, and he got a letter through to the Tibetan government in Dharamsala that we wrote wanting to interview him for Spin magazine, and they came back and said yes. And so
Wow.
Bob Guccione Jr., not the
Yeah.
senior,
Right.
ran
Right.
Spin magazine. So he was
Very
like,
different
"Oh, dude,"
people.
he goes, "You got the interview?" He goes, "I'm coming with you." So he came with me, paid for the whole trip. It was great. So we
Man,
got to,
how like set that stage for me, man. What was the interview like? Did you actually go to the temple and sit
yeah,
with him
cool.
there?
Yeah, we had an hour scheduled with him, but he spoke to us for 2.5, and it was that interview actually paved the way for me many years later when I did go back to Dharamsala for the Tibetan monks to welcome me into their kind of circle, because I had actually had more time talking to their religious leader than they have had the time to talk to him,
Wow.
because
Interesting. Okay.
access to the media or whatever, So they asked a lot of questions about that interview as well. But the main thing I got out of that interview with His Holiness was that um, he's just like all of us, same fears, same desires. And I asked him about if it was okay to chop down 30 trees in the rainforest to create one bottle of medicine for a cancer patient that will keep them alive for a month. One human
Okay.
being, right? Because I read an article about that's what it took to make this one bottle that could help potentially sustain, not even guaranteed, right?
Sure.
Um, for a month, 30 trees. And he said, of course, of course it is. And I said, why do you say that? He goes, because there's many more worlds. There's many more universes. Cut down
Mm.
all the trees to save one life, you know?
Wow.
And I was like,
It,
that's deep thinking.
yeah, absolutely. You
So,
know, conversely, and I would have expected him to talk about 30 lives of the trees, and what it would take to replant but,
but if
but
they're thinking about, reincarnation. So if you're
right.
reincarnated into a tree or a rock, that's kind of a lower form from, having freedom, so to speak,
Sure. Yeah.
freedom of choice. And they say that the human being is the most blessed version, in a way, the luckiest version of life,
Okay.
because you can make the decision to swim in the ocean like a dolphin, or climb up the mountain like a mountain goat, or skydive like a hawk. The human being has the options to do everything all the other animals do, right?
Yeah.
Where they don't. A dolphin cannot,
Right.
go mountain
Right.
climbing, and the goat's like swimming in the ocean. Woohoo! You know. So.
I a couple years ago, I had an amazing opportunity to go. I went to Thailand for a
Mm,
few weeks,
wow, nice.
and one thing that I was just really impressed by, and I tried to impart on my kids, was that experiencing the cultures is really important, right? You need to get outside not only your
It's true.
community, but also your political structure, and look at the cultural
More so.
differences between what you currently have. And one of the things that changed my life completely was that I hired a former monk to give me a tour of the temples there. And we
Okay.
went and we talked to the Buddhist monks there and the kids that were in the monastery that were studying.
Yeah.
And the most beautiful thing was that their entire focus was to study unconditional kindness and love. And that
Yeah.
was it.
Yeah.
Lose judgment, lose hate. And it was at a point that, I think about, you talked about the divisiveness, especially politically, that happens here in the US and elsewhere, where there's so much contrast in views that there's no compromise and there's no sort of listening and understanding.
Yeah.
And the unconditional part of that thing that makes us all the same, that's what they're studying there. That's what they were promoting, and I would imagine that conversation was very similar with the Dalai Lama as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of insights he imparted, but I went to this nonviolent communication workshop in Jerusalem one day. It was like a Saturday, Sunday afternoon, 2-day thing, and it was Palestinians and Israeli Jews, Israeli Arabs, at this group. I'd say there were about 30 people there, right? And
Yeah.
the biggest lesson I got out of it, there was some really beautiful, heart touching moments where one person at the workshop had um, uh, been a soldier in the IDF and had killed the brother of a woman that was at the workshop.
Wow.
And they were there to heal, to have conversation together and heal about this stuff. And that was deep as hell. But the thing that I got out of that, even in another way, was the woman that was running the workshop. She said, the greatest thing about, nonviolence, I mean, the greatest way to create nonviolence is to listen with your heart and then speak from the heart. So it's like the invisible talking stick. If you're holding the talking stick, you're talking, but when you let it go, you're actually listening. You're not waiting to talk. And what happens with so many conversations that are happening politically right now, right between the left and the right, is everybody they're set in their views and they're not listening. They're waiting to talk.
Right.
Or scream over each other.
Yeah, I was going to say not even waiting, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not really interested in hearing what the other person has to say.
They're trying to one up the other person and all this other stuff. It's
yeah. Well, I mean, you've been in Europe for a long time, over a decade.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends that are expats all over the world, but when they're, U.S. citizens, they started U.S. citizens, they can't help but sort of be at least peripherally, interested or watching and engaged in what happens politically in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I know when I'm over there, like I'm in Europe or I'm in Asia, and I hear from some, as soon as somebody finds out where I'm from, they say, "Oh man, how could you have voted for X, Y, and Z person?" Or "You must be really happy that so-and-so is in office." And it's interesting to hear how somebody else's perception is, right, of what things are like in America. And I know you, I think you and I talked about this a little bit during COVID, because we both got engaged a little bit in political discourse with people. If somebody was just what we felt to be preposterous and saying things that were so ridiculous, it's hard not to get in a conversation with them. Not, just asking for information, and then you realize that it's exhaustive and it doesn't change anybody's mind. Right.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you're preaching to the converted, people that believe what you believe, or you're like angering and the people that don't believe what you believe, and you're making them stronger. And look what they're doing to what's going on with Trump. The more he is like put under the microscope, the more indictments, the more everything they put toward him, the stronger he gets.
Right.
Remember the movie Fifth Element, where that planet gobbler was coming toward them, and they were firing everything into it, and the more they shot into
stronger.
Right?
Yeah.
That's exactly Donald Trump. It's exactly what's going on. And I think the protests that's going on right now, I don't think it affects Hamas's point of view or Netanyahu's point of view. They're going to do what they're going to do. And we're over here just like, oh my God, it's horrible what's going on.
It is
everything.
I talked to some people about
I'm gonna start a cult where we drink Kool-Aid. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's right. Put your Nikes on and watch for the comet. Well, I see like Sukhbir Sakon in the chat says, if humans are the highest form of life, then God's a bit of an underachiever. That's now.
That's a good one.
Right. I mean, my oldest son really took the stuff to heart, the cultural differences, and he actually moved to Thailand about 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And I mentioned it before we got on the chat. My dad passed away about 5 weeks ago, and just before he passed, he sat my kids down and talked about the importance of understanding and listening to other cultures. He said, travel, man, you need to get outside your world. And you've done that. I mean, you did that. You went to, I think, didn't you go to France first? And then
I lived in France after India. I went to Israel, and then after Israel, France, then France to Prague. Yeah.
All right. So what were the decisive factors to find each of those places, and what drew you to those spots?
One was love, one was religion, and the other was art.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in that order, but
big chapters in Dan Reed life, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerusalem was an opportunity to kind of dive into Islam and Judaism more after going through that, year up in northern India studying Buddhism. I thought the more I could learn about all the different faiths, I thought the more I would understand them in a way. And I guess I do, but I also it's just tragic that everybody has to believe that their team is the best team.
Right.
It's like, can't your team just be a great team? What
Right.
is it?
When that's
Why does it have to be the best team? You know,
that that didn't seem to be the case when I talked to those monks in Thailand. The Buddhist monks just really did
Buddhism
feel
is the most chill of all.
sure, yeah,
They're
because
more accepting. Yeah,
they're not going to kill you for believing in a different faith. But
depends. If you stomp on their garden, they might.
right, yeah. Well, for Prague, I mean that was a big deal. So Prague was the focal point for your artwork.
Yeah, I wanted to go there to create and write music, and I was inspired by the city. And then, lo and behold, just a few months after moving there, I met uh, the woman who became the mother of our child, Joshua, Katarzyna.
Yeah,
So
beautiful.
that became home. So that's home now.
Yeah,
I'll probably,
yeah.
unless my son wants to move to Key West someday, I'll follow him there.
Wow. Do you think that would be his
I can only hope.
Yeah, yeah.
Dad,
Well, that is the spot.
I want to be a shrimp farmer on Key West.
What about
Really?
Honduras, man? He can go to to
Yeah, I'm down.
Brian's place in
I'm
Rotan.
down with that too. Down with that
Have
too.
you visited his place down in Honduras?
I have not. We've spoken on many a Zoom call, and he showed me around and stuff, but I have not been down there.
Man, you've somebody in the chat was asking what you're doing here in Portland, and we talked about it just a tiny bit. But there's a brand new Dan Reed Network album coming out. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know when it's coming out, but we're recording it right now, so it'll either come out this fall or early next year. But
Okay.
we got some crazy ideas about videos for this stuff, and like I was saying earlier, it's definitely funky and I think rocking hard and got some emotional moments to it. But it's got its tongue. I hope planted in his cheek. I hope we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Larry Toring out there asking who was
Oh,
what you're doing
Larry,
here in town. So yeah. So
what's up, Larry?
Larry's been a big supporter of the network forever, right? The
Larry supports
so
everything. Everything
that's well
music.
anything related or indirectly related to Deep Purple, I think. So
Yeah, that's true.
I bust his balls a lot about it,
You
but
do.
we're both mutual Scorpions fans, which is a good thing. So
Okay.
so we're talking the network. Now I've had Melvin on the show, had incredible fun conversations. That dude has more, anecdotes and humor than most people I know.
Yeah.
And of course, Rob Dacre's been on the show. It was really fun to talk about his transition from being, not only a fan of the band and a huge sort of, collaborative partner to you, but now a really big part in what you're doing with the network, right? So
Yeah.
he's outside of Dan Reed Network. I think Rob is kind of like the secret weapon for most bands in Portland that he ends up recording.
Absolutely.
He's got more talent, and it's crazy to me that he's not only a wickedly talented guitarist and engineer, producer, but he's also a great singer and he's humble, which is nice.
But my favorite thing about Rob, I mean, his skills are unmatched. Especially on the goddamn guitar. Can I swear on the podcast?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, man.
Especially on the guitar, and as a songwriter, vocalist, lyricist, all this stuff, a producer, engineer, yes. But his sense of humor.
Yeah.
To work with somebody over the course of 25, I don't know how many years it's been, 25 years now, that it's the sense of humor that I will always come back for. And it's the stuff that no one will ever get to see. Because when I try to turn the camera on to film it, he clams up.
Yeah.
And it's gone.
He's aloof that way. Yeah. He's like this. He's like Santa Claus, man. He just delivers the gifts and then he runs away. But
it's like, exactly.
How about the other guys in the band, man? What are your thoughts? Because I know that you and Brian were really kind of primary writers in a lot of the respects in the back of the day, right?
Yeah. Well, we're doing this album, especially, I think out of the 12 songs, 8 are songs that Brian started the music for and sent me that. And then I arranged and wrote lyrics and melodies and stuff on top of that, but they wouldn't exist. So 2/3 of the album is all Brian's music vibe, which is awesome. And then Rob did 2 songs And I did too, where I started the music, and then wrote all the lyrics just to kind of keep some kind of, not all the lyrics. There's a song by Brian and Tracy Class. You know Tracy?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, they wrote a song called Reach. I changed only a couple little things in it, but it's like maybe my favorite song on the record. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it about that one that kind of stands out to you?
You know, I don't know if you know, I've been working on this film project, and I always love theater and all this other stuff, and I like the idea of portraying a character more than writing the character and acting the character. So like when I write a song and then I'm singing the song, it's one thing, but I much prefer singing someone else's song as an actor, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I enjoy the song because it's I didn't write the majority of the lyrics, and the melody and the chorus I didn't write, and I loved singing it. So I was like, that's my favorite song.
Right on.
You know what I mean? I'm a fan of it.
Yeah. Well,
it's hard to be a fan of your own melody,
Of course.
So they go, oh, my melodies are great, Fuck.
Or if you're like a lot of artists that I know, it's never finished, right? You can never like sort of finish your own stuff, because every time you hear it, you're going to want to do something differently. You sleep on it for a week and you realize, oh man, I would have done it a completely different way. But if you took somebody else's work. Yeah. Who are your favorite artists right now?
Musically, you're talking about?
Yeah.
I like this band, Sleep Token. Have you heard their new stuff?
Oh yeah, of course, man. A drummer. Oh my God.
Yeah. Drummer is ridiculous. I just discovered this kind of, what's it called? Wishing. Oh, Within Temptation.
Okay.
Have you heard this band?
I haven't. No.
It's kind of, effervescent, goth rock, but really heavy, kind of like really heavy. What's the German band? The heavy
Ghost?
German. Well, Ghost. Is
great, by the way. Rammstein.
So it's kind of Rammstein mixed with female vocalist, goth, operatic rock.
Wow.
And it's really cool.
Nice.
I like that too as well. But
I could see Ghost being something. Speaking of Ghost, I mean, a track that I know Rob helped work on, and you just heard Jeff Buhner just played me his most recent, that mastered version or the mixed version of "We Were Beautiful," his new track.
Oh, dude, that's ridiculous!
Unbelievable, man. That chorus is so it's a hit. It's crazy. The Loyal Order, man. It's fun to watch. That that should be a force to be reckoned with.
Well, Jeff, he's so humble. He was like the bass player and sideman guy and singing stuff. And then it's like he comes out and sings lead and writes songs that like are next level.
Right.
And he's the real secret weapon. You thought Rob Dacre's the secret weapon? It's Jeff Buhner. Is the secret.
Love it, man. There's your there's your pull quote, Jeff Buhner, for the next album promotion. Maybe not. I love the dude. He's my brother. He'd be
better than Biden or Trump. I can tell you that much.
I don't want that for him. That's the thing. I love the guy, and I think that job would ruin any decent person, And so he had a good story for the first time he met you. He was a huge fan of your playing. Yep. He said, and I don't remember if it was like Eli's or someplace like that back in the day, but the network was already slamming. You guys had, a massive following, and he went in there with his now, ex-wife, and he was sitting at a table and he was watching you. And he said, I was grumpy. I had my arms crossed and I was watching because they're so good, damn it. And they have all the, they all look great. They sound great. Everybody loves that band. And he said, we all wanted a piece of what the network had. And so I was, counting my resentments as I watched them, but secretly loving them. And Dan Reed walked by me and he said, I like your hair, man. And he said, I wanted to hate him so bad, but Dan Reed liked my hair. And so
and look what it got me.
And you guys both have the same hairstyle again. I told him, I said, Dan Reed keeps chasing your hairstyle, man. It's
true. It's true.
The hair thing, man, that was a big controversial thing for you in the past, right? I love this story. of was it Rainbow Child? Is that when the hair
Yeah,
came off?
we were down in San Francisco about to shoot the video the next day, and we went down a day earlier at the hotel, and I was there with Jason Webb, a good friend of mine, and yeah, first we did the Last Emperor haircut, shaved it back and had just the ponytail from the back of the skull, and then took it all off, and everybody, I mean, the label, our management, everybody lost their shit. Got really bad and upset with me, and that was a tough one. And then we were going on the road with the Stones 2 weeks later.
Oh yeah.
And I just
what was the impetus for the shave? The shave? Was there a reason for it?
Well, I was worried about too much focus being on the looks and not the music. It was a lot of talk about all the pretty boy stuff, and I never wore spandex. I can say that much about my career.
Yeah.
But I didn't like that, even though I was part of it. So I thought I read a quote by Gandhi where he said that the reason why monks kept their hair and their fingernails short, was to kind of always remain humble. Like you're no more special than the next person next to you. And I thought that would help me kind of get over that ego that was running rampant at the time. Yeah.
Was it, I mean, that was a huge part. The industry at that point, that was late 80s, right? Right around 90 when you guys did that.
Yeah.
And so it was pre-grunge, right?
90, yeah.
Where everything changed, when the grunge thing came out. But late 80s, early 90s, you were still hanging on to the Sunset Strip era, where there was that look that almost everybody had. But there were bands that kind of came out that had substance and talent beyond the aesthetic. So I mean, I was a huge Living Colour fan at that point, and
me too.
Of course, I mean, every single person in that band could play their ass off. They had a little bit of a glam look, I mean, Corey was wearing his spandex outfit, but he also, was a gospel singer, and the guys could play their ass off. Extreme was another one, that chops for days, but they had a little bit of a glossy look, and bands. Some of those bands would get pigeonholed into, the glam, that I don't want to use. I don't know what right term to use, but they would get
that's the right term.
Yeah, I mean, hairband, right? They get stuck in a hairband moniker when just because they had hair and they were pretty, the band actually had some chops. And the Network, same kind of thing. The difference for you guys really was that there was this multi-ethnic, sort of composition of the band that was really unique, and there was a really cool funk underlying element to the band, and that was intentional, right? I mean, when you started out, you were kind of you wanted the funk thing to be a real.
Well, we didn't have a choice because we were a club band, and we wanted to keep the dance floors packed so the bar did good, so the club owners were happy, so they'd ask us to come back, and we liked playing to people rather than sitting back at tables. We wanted them in front of us, and the only way to really get that happening was to play some grooves that people wanted to get out of their chairs, So Melvin Brannon was the perfect bass player for laying that down to get the funk party started on whatever we wrote. Because the most simple pop song can be made really funky with the right bass player, and Melvin was that guy,
It's funny, that bass line, because I had Mickey Thomas on the show about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And it's really funny that, I mean, of course, Fooled Around and Fell in Love, Elvin Bishop stuff, he was a part of, but then when it came into Starship, right? Like Starship gets panned so hard for maybe the corniest pop song of all time, right? And we built the city. We built the city
on rock and
that's the one. That's actually a Bernie Taupin song. He wrote that for him.
I don't mind the song. It's the production, that ding 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 ding.
But he's on the show. He sang the bass line. He said it started off as a funk bass line. It was a super funky tune, and it was more like Sledgehammer from Peter Gabriel.
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
But he said they actually, they realized that they were going to sell a lot more records if they glossed it up a little bit. It's tough to imagine what that song would have been. And actually, the song was pretty dark,
Yeah, but that was a #1 hit.
They're laughing all the way to the bank, man.
So they did exactly what they needed to do.
Yeah.
I didn't like it so much, though. You know what song? What's your least favorite song? Everybody asks what's your favorite song. What's your least favorite song? I'll tell you what mine is.
Well, that one was one that I would turn off right away.
No,
I hate it. Can I? I'll tell you. I mean, from I I'm going to be alienating a lot of people by saying this, but I can tell you what it is, and
I
I
will
might be the
too
only
when I
person.
say my song too.
All right, Under the Bridge from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, that's one that you just like, I can't listen to it.
Can't, dude. Hit nails on the chalkboard, man. That the rhythm section's incredible. I can't stand Kiedis' voice, dude. Drives me nuts.
You know what mine is?
What's that?
I don't even know the name of it. I hate it so much. It goes, I say, hey, 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 hey,
Oh,
hey, hey, hey,
yeah,
hey.
yeah.
I
Four
say,
Non Blondes.
hey. They already said hey
What?
like 10
Yeah.
times.
What's going on from Four Non Blondes?
What's going
Yep.
on? Is you're saying
Yeah.
hey.
That's
What's going on.
yeah. Well, there's the tough thing is, as a musician, I've run into to Chad Smith a few times, and
Uh-huh.
I want to ask him, dude, does it drive you absolutely crazy to hear your singer on stage and just know, okay, I'm collecting checks? And nah, that's a really shitty thing to say, but I
That's
it
what
served
rubs
them
you the
well.
wrong. It's funny how different things rub people the wrong way.
It
Yeah.
kills me, man. Yeah, well, the new music, it's crazy to me. I talked about the Bon Jovi thing.
Mm.
Because Jovi's, he just finally took a little bit of a break, but he talked about having changed gears a little bit too, because he was also interested in theater and film,
Yeah.
like you, and had a pretty successful run at it. But he talks about, his a lot of auditions and casting calls that didn't go so great, because he'd show up and guys that could actually act, that had a pedigree were there
Yes.
before him, and he didn't really want to use the Bon Jovi name to be able to land himself some decent roles, so he wanted to earn it.
That was cool about him on that for sure.
Yeah, you've known him, right? You guys toured with him. Did you guys get a chance to know the band very well when you were out on the road?
No, not so well. I mean, I would say Richie more than anybody else, and David a little bit. Tico was cool. They were all cool people. It was just
Sure.
John was hard to get to know, far back as I can remember. And even with the Stones, there's so much. You get like these brief moments, Charlie Watts would come back. This story you'll like. He would wish us good luck before every show and shake our hands. He was a real gentleman. And the suits that he wears on all the photo shoots of the Rolling Stones for the last 30, 40 years are suits he makes.
Oh, he made them. Wow.
He's a tailor. So
he was.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Charlie passed.
Yeah,
Man.
exactly.
That was a big loss. But
and he lived out in the English countryside in a one-story house, like a farmhouse, never bought mansions and boats and all that stuff. Just a sweet guy. Right?
Yeah, man.
So
the humility part's pretty cool. I've become a lot more familiar with Jeff Beck stuff over time.
Wow.
With playing with Jennifer Batten. Jennifer's got these amazing stories about Jeff, and even though he had a castle out in the countryside in England, she said all he wanted to do was work on cars. He was just as a mechanic, man. The last thing he really wanted to do was practice, and that it was just his hands were beat to shit because covered in grease because he'd been working on hot rods all day. But it's nice to know, those side projects. So and they're more passions. So speaking of passions and projects, Dan Reed developed a love and appreciation for painting, and now this is a big part of your life.
Yeah, it's started during COVID, when we couldn't tour anymore, play any shows. So I remember loving painting, 20 years prior to that, 25 years prior to that. So bought a bunch of canvases and painted and posted them online, and people bought them. And I was like, well, this is amazing. So I'm just going to keep doing this. And eventually it led to me getting a studio in Prague. It's just a few blocks from our house. So, because I turned my living room into a giant painting studio, and the family wasn't going to have it anymore. So,
right.
But now they got the painting studio. I've been there a year and a half now, something like that.
Okay.
And it's a place of solace for me, for sure.
I can relate. I talked about my father. Dad was a painter, a lifelong career painter. When I went back, I spent a couple months with him before he passed away. And I was looking at his legacy. hundreds of canvases, a lot
Yeah.
that he had taken off stretcher bars and hidden
Mhm.
away.
Yeah.
I'd find them tucked away, and
Wow.
that legacy is really it's strange for me right now because I'm trying to figure out what to do with that legacy. You know, my mom doesn't want to cheapen it by just, you know, actively advertising and trying to market it. We're certainly not going to fire sale the stuff, but people have been reaching out about some of his work.
Yeah.
And um, I've always had some of my favorites of his stuff, and it's incredible to me to look at where his appreciation for his work was versus
Mhm.
what somebody else sees. I mean, art is subjective, right? It's subjective, and it's a beautiful thing that it doesn't have to be derivative. It doesn't have to be because you've got some beautiful abstract art, and
Oh, thank you.
it's almost left up to, you know, the interpretation of the viewer, right? That's a gorgeous thing about art.
Yeah, I'm
Andrew
going kind
Gillen
of,
in the
yeah.
chat, he's asking. He said he thinks that you've done some incredible work over the last few years. He wanted to know which one painting you're proudest of.
Oh, that would have to be the one where, remember the last standing ape, Andrew? I did this kind of cityscape painting, and it's a ape from Planet of the Apes style ape, you know. He's like geared up, he's got armor on, he's got a machine gun down to his side, or her side, whatever gender the ape is. It's standing on top of this kind of rocky mountaintop, but overlooking this metropolis city that stretches off into the distance. It took me like 7 days to paint, and I did all the little lights in the city with a little, you know, a pencil point, just white dots, yellow dots, orange dots. Went crazy. It took forever. So that's my favorite painting, Andrew.
Uh, I you know, you've got the highware walker, the tightrope walker that
Oh
you put
yeah,
up. That
yeah. Then
it's amazing to me, man. I mean, there's a
you like that
lot that
one?
goes into that. For reasons that, you know, are probably different than what you were thinking when you painted it. But I wanted to ask you about the symbolism and the imagery of the worlds behind, right? Because we've
Yeah.
you mentioned one of the things, you conversations you said you wanted to have was about aliens. You know, so
Oh
talk more
yeah.
about
Well,
otherworldly things.
yeah, well, that painting, for example, it's like it's called Finding Balance, and it's you'll have the water, for example, like nature, but then you
Hmm.
have like this really dystopian, you know, no one would want to live there city. I mean, colorful wise, maybe, but definitely
Yeah,
the congestion and how oppressive it is. No one
sure.
will want to live there, and so this person's walking this tightrope between, you know, where we're heading now with AI versus
Yeah.
going camping. Do we go camping, or do we like put on the VR, you know, put on the goggles and go camping in our brain, or do we actually go camping out in nature?
Right. Yeah.
So
Not
that's,
virtual camping.
yeah, that's why it's called Finding Balance. But yeah, I think we're going through the same thing with the our natural tendency to evolve into it, potentially, I'm just guessing here, everyone, evolve into this kind of alien species, you know, which is why we're, you know, less hairy than apes. This is very kind of alien-like skin if you think about it. We have to build buildings and to live in because the weather kicks our ass, right?
Hmm.
So I think maybe another 10,000 years, I'm guessing, this is my guess, that we're going to become more kind of, you know, all gender, asexual,
Hmm.
alien type beings. Um, and maybe what's going on with the gender stuff right now, I think one of it is there's actual gender dysphoria that's very real. And then you have the side of puberty's tough. There's a way out. That's cool. That sounds cool. So there's
Right.
I would say more of a fashion sense of it, but also it's, you know, puberty is a bitch. Fucking hated it.
It was
I'm
the
sure,
worst.
right? It's the worst for all of us people.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
any kids that are out there, I
yeah,
talk a lot to people about this, and
yeah.
I'm going to put this up in the captions here, guys. Um, right now, this time of year is tricky because a lot of kids are going through graduation,
Mm,
and you know, we've got some underage viewers that watch the show that
mm.
talk oftentimes about the struggle they have. Sometimes it's because of you know,
Bullying or
I mean, it's all around the
yeah,
bullying, but it depends on what it is, whether
yeah,
there's a gender the
mm,
sexual preference or
yeah.
whatever. but they added this new easy crisis line, for suicide and crisis line. So
Wow.
calling 988 here in the U.S. is a great thing because they have mental health workers that are there. So when you feel like you're alone and you don't have anybody to talk to, this number is there specifically designed for somebody that can just listen and help. So I'm putting that up there now.
That's great.
But as far as like this evolution thing goes, yeah, man. I mean, people that don't, it makes sense, right? It's a possibility for sure.
I mean, look at all the books and movies and stories and fantasies that we have about, where we're going to go in the future as a race. We're not, we might have evolved from apes, but we're clearly not apes at the moment, right? So we're like way forward thinking than apes are at the moment. Right. And yet
some of us, yeah.
And yet there's, you can say that the drive to use progress or technology for evil or good is really what every species has to deal with, whether you're an alien species or an ape species or whatever. Any species has to deal with whether you're going to kill everything in the jungle or you're going to try to help lift it up, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting what the human race is going through right now, where our growing pains are getting more and more obvious because of social media. We see it now more than ever. So we're witnesses to our own demise, or are we? Are we witnesses to us rising up above how fucked up things can get?
Yeah, well, when you talk about that being interesting, and even about this evolution, my son Caleb, the one that's over in Thailand, he's fascinated by the developments of Elon Musk, right?
Really, my son is too.
And I've got an uncle who's he was a professor of space law at Georgetown. He's Danish and very quiet, peace-loving human being.
Yeah.
And so he's had a lot of keynotes with Elon Musk. My son said, "You've met him? Tell me about his sort of the, off-camera conversations." And he said, "You might be disappointed in how altruistic you think he is." And he said, the idea that he wants to go and transfer humanity to another planet, as a way out, to sort of rectify all the wrongs that we've done is, that's, he said, first of all, it's like, it's just saying, let's like fuck up this campsite and then move to the next one kind of thing. And, it's not really responsible in terms of humanity, but I'm paraphrasing because that's not, my uncle didn't say it in quite as crass a term as
but I know what you're saying. Yeah. I think that, people like Elon Musk is in some degree a character in a play for all of us to either aspire toward or to repel from, Sure. I think overall we need people like that, we need.
There's no denying the development of the technology, that it's changed our life completely in a very short amount of time.
For sure.
Yeah. What do you think about the, as far as aliens go? I mean, you talked about this transformation in our evolution.
Well, that's what I was saying is that if we have this, and I was saying that the gender dysphoria is one thing, and then you have like the element of it being therapeutic to be able to change your gender because you're having a tough time in your life. But then there's also, I think, a drive for us to become something more than we are, right? Procreating and, going through college and getting a job and just keep doing the same circle. I think there's part of the human race that realizes that there's another, level that we can get to as a species, and that they're hungering for that. So that's going on too, I think, with all the evolving that's going on, especially on the left, where the right is fighting to hold on to the old traditional stuff. The left is going, no, throw it all away. And it's right. So I just don't know if we're going too fast. That's my biggest question. I think we should be there in about 10,000 years, but it seems like people want to get there in about 10. Slow down, people.
That is our nature, right? Short attention span.
Bring the right wing with you. You got to slow down.
Yes, man. The TikTok generation wants everything in 2 seconds now. there's one healing thing that kind of this sounds very uh, contrived, so I don't mean for it to, but I think the one thing that sort of bridges all the divisiveness, man, the right, the left, um, differences in religion and politics and all that other stuff, man, is music, is the healing, cathartic piece. And ultimately, that was my biggest excitement about having you on the show,
Yeah.
is that you've touched people in a massive way
That's
in
because
your
I
music.
smashed him over the head with a guitar.
That's a bitter touch, but yeah, man. What I promised folks was that they're going to hear a little live Dan Reed music, and I didn't set it up, but I'm really grateful to know that the song that you were warming up to was one of my favorite all-time tunes.
Really?
So I'm gonna take myself off camera while you do this, and before you do, I do want to say, if people got here late, you should know that this show is brought to you from Music Millennium, and Music Millennium, based in Portland, Oregon, is the greatest record store that you're going to find on the planet. They've got all the other media there, but they've been a big proponent of supporting regional music and local music, which is where the Dan Reed thing first started, right? So Portland, Oregon, I think, is the seminal point for Dan Reed and Dan Reed Network. And so we want to thank Music Millennium for being a sponsor for the show. And so thank you, Terry Courier.
Terry Courier.
You can go there and you can order your stuff right online. So if you guys aren't in the Portland area, if you are in Portland, go see him at 32nd Burnside. But if you're not, go to musicmillennium.com. Now, with that business being done, I'm going to take myself off camera, and we're just going to get to hear the beautiful sounds of Dan Reed. What you're going to do on your side? Is that right?
Yeah, this is remember I was telling you about the time up in the monastery up in northern India. This was the song I wrote, realizing that I was going to go back to writing music and touring again and leaving the monastery. So this was my thank you letter to the monks for letting me be with them for a year.
That is beautiful, man. All right, take it away, buddy.
They're gone. Been on monster sites, been on feeling like I've never had it all, where I cannot hide from my haunted hearts. Heaven now is on my side, and I've been out of my head now, but I'm coming home for good now, 'cause I am on your side, and you, angels on my shoulders tonight. Yeah, I am on your side, and you have always been there, shining your lights for me. I've seen the monster's eyes under my bed. I guess he's coming for my head. Pretend he's not there, and if he sinks his teeth in, I'll pretend I just don't care. And I've been out of my head now, but I'm coming home for good now. 'Cause I am on your side, and you, angels on my shoulders tonight. Yeah, I'm on your side, and you have always been there, shining your lights for me. You're the sun behind the clouds. You're the reason I dream out loud. You're the earth beneath the rain. The rain. The rain. And I've been out of my head now, out of my head, but I'm coming home for good now. 'Cause I am on your side, and you, angels on my shoulders tonight. Yeah, I'm on your side, and you have always been there, shining your lights for me. I'm on your side. Yeah, I'm on your side. Yeah, I'm on your side. Yeah, I'm on your side. On your side. Yo.
God damn you. Damn you, man. Sorry. God, that is it's such a beautiful thing. I'm so sorry. That song is it's really special, man.
Well, what was your father's name?
Jerry.
Jerry.
Yeah.
Wow. So that was for Jerry. I'm seeing. It's beautiful.
Wow. Pardon me for a sec, man.
It's okay, buddy.
Wow. Jules in the chat, she's like, yeah, nothing wrong with Dan's vocal cords. That's the truth, man. You sound so good, man. There's a great video from that studio that you did with Rob Dacre a couple years ago.
Yeah, us to be doing this song. Yeah,
same song. Beautiful. He's got the harmonies in there.
Yeah, we tried talking him. You tried talking him into it earlier.
I did.
I said no.
That's his humility. He said, "This is the Dan Reed show, man. We don't want it to,
There's not room in that studio for the two of us. This studio's not big enough."
That's why I couldn't be there, person too, man. You were asking about that earlier, and I think I couldn't live in that air with you guys. I just
that's because it's too much marijuana smoke for you.
Well, not just that. No, I actually am gonna pop. I am gonna pop in and get to see some of your
come by tomorrow.
Your track
come by tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Sounds great.
Tell me what's going on tomorrow. Where are you at in terms of the tracking process?
We got all the vocals done. So all the background vocals, lead vocals, my guitar parts, key parts. Brian's doing his guitar parts and vocal parts now in Honduras right now. Dan Pred's coming in here in a couple weeks. Start getting track of the drums, and then goes to Melvin as the last cog in the wheel, and he'll do his bass parts down in LA, because it's much more cost effective to just like send the tracks to each other in their own studios.
Yeah.
Rather than everybody living in the same city for like a month or two, trying to make a record. It's crazy. It's crazy.
The virtual thing is nice. Typically, folks in the chat and people watching the show, traditionally, when a band goes in to record records, a lot of times it would be these basic tracks. They'd lay the rhythm tracks down first, drums and bass, and you'd get the rhythm tracks. So kind of doing this in reverse.
Well, we between Brian, myself, and Rob, we just programmed the hell out of the drums, so the drums sound pretty good. And we're just like, we're like, it's gonna sound better with Dan Pred in it, but it's really nice to kind of sing to, track to, and stuff.
Sure.
It's
man,
too tight.
That when you do that, so you mentioned Brian's doing his stuff in Honduras. Melvin's down in LA. Like all these other guys have really interesting kind of projects, and Melvin's been doing. He's kind of a gun for hire in LA. I know of Edgar Winter for a long time, and
what's the last one he was doing? Buddy Guy, was it? He was Buddy Guy.
How great! Yeah, that's it. He's such a funky dude, man. Spoony, right?
Melvin. And then Brian's got a weekly gig he's doing down in Honduras. He's got a club I think he owns down there that he's playing in, and that's a nice.
Not just that, right? But he runs like a snorkel school, and he teaches beekeeping, right?
Yeah, and then he's like making products out of beeswax and honey, and it's just Brian's like crazy down there. It's great. It's great.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah, Dan Pred, he said Booker T and the MGs. Of course, that's the project that Melvin's been doing.
Buddy Guy, Booker T,
and then thank you, Dan Pred.
And then Dan Pred, doing just tons and tons of like commercial and video work.
Yeah,
it's just beautiful, beautiful stuff.
He's a video ninja.
Video ninja. Fuck, big time.
I can't get him to do the show. Right, Pred and I have been best friends for 25, 30 years, and when I started doing the show, because he, like Rob, is kind of he doesn't want to be the focal point and doesn't want to talk about his stuff, but one thing that he had told me in the past, and I love this, is that his appreciation and fascination with video came from those early days when you were doing this stuff for the Dan Reed Network. I think he mentioned like doing Make It Easy and.
We used to talk on the bus, back in the days. Those are our early tours, first in the vans, then on the bus. Dan Pred and I would always fantasize about someday making movies, talking about that. And he did a really cool thing for, I think it was his father's birthday. He made or wedding anniversary. I can't remember which it was. Dan Pred will tell you. But his first main project was taking old photos from the family, album, and making like a really beautiful video. I think it was for his dad. And that kind of sparked him to go, you know what, I can do this for other people. And that led into other things. And it's really awesome. Great cinematographer now too, and editor and everything. Yeah, it's great.
Man, it's exciting. I know when the network first reunited, you guys did that show, I think at the Sheraton Ballroom, and it was a New Year's Eve thing that you did back in Portland.
2012, yeah.
Yeah, nobody thought that was ever going to happen again, right? Everybody had their own lives going on, and there was just a beautiful catalyst to get you guys there. I was grateful.
Yeah, that was all, Blake Sakamoto and Bart Hafman pulled that together. So that was the impetus of that happening. Otherwise, it would have never happened.
Is that crazy?
It is crazy. And the first thing I said to Bart is like, well, I have to talk to Brian James and see if he even wants to do it. That would be the number one thing. And I called Brian up and got his number from somebody and called him up, and he was like, wow, this is good timing. This would be the perfect time to do this in my life right now. And I was like, okay, then it's on,
Yeah.
Then I had to get a hold of Melvin, and Melvin was down, and Dan Pred got behind the kit and started playing again, and sounded great.
As a drummer, man, not only is he one of my best friends, but I am such a fan of his drumming. That guy is like, he's a monster pocket player, and there's something about the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. For a lot of bands, that's true. There are a lot of incredibly profound and amazing parts of this band, and it just so happens that
Yeah.
it touched a lot of people. The music has touched a lot of people. Outside the Dan Reed sort of persona, when you guys were on your hiatus, I remember moving to Portland and telling people, yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed that this band is no longer around, because I was a huge fan of the band. And almost every woman I ran into was like, oh yeah, I dated Dan for X amount of time. And I thought, wow, you're like the 2000th person that said that Dan Reed was your ex-boyfriend. So yeah, Dan Reed has,
sounds like a good dream.
Yeah. Well,
2,000 women.
Most of those women were, I think, because you had the charisma and the energy, but I think you probably made a lot of women just feel special just as people, not just, so I've said this a lot on my show in the past. Legacy is a huge thing for me. I've talked about this a little bit. What is it that you want people to remember Dan Reed for when your time has come and gone?
I would hope that I turned a lyric that moved people.
Yeah,
that would be great. That would be great.
That deal is already done. You saw, what you did.
Success then.
That was my first tear on the show, man. I apologize about that. But I don't actually apologize. I'm super grateful, but and for the right reasons. I think there are some times when I've wanted to cry because again, like you said, some things that are going on in the world are really difficult to see. But man, I can't tell you how much that song, man, it's a beautiful thing. Selfishly,
I still want to invent the time machine, so I'm still working on that.
Where would you go?
Oh, it's not a time go into the future or the past. It's just a time condensing machine. It goes from point A to point B like super fast. So if you want to go to the other side of the galaxy to visit some of our galactic neighbors, it takes like 13 seconds instead of 10,000 light years. So that's the machine I'm working on. So.
Well, you could call your buddy Elon. I'm sure you could, that'll happen sooner than later.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I think maybe those Switzerland guys that are building the thing underground are more in that.
The collider.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, man. Well, you mentioned the evolution, 10,000 years. Maybe that's how long it'll take us to get there. But, if we're still alive and together, that would be a phenomenal thing. Man, so you're finishing tracks on Sunday, right? You're finishing things up.
Finishing tracks Saturday, heading back to Prague on Sunday. Yeah.
Okay.
My tracks.
And what's next for the network? Then are you guys going to do some touring?
I don't think this year. I think we're going to do it next year. That's why I don't know when the record's going to be released. But we're going to make some videos and stuff between now and when the record comes out, and start leaking it out to the world slowly but surely. Nice. I think it's going to be it's our heaviest record for sure. Without a doubt.
Let's hear it for the King. Was huge. That last record was monstrous.
This is heavier.
Really? Oh my God, that's great, man. All right, so who's the perfect touring band then? If you could pick any band that's out there still working, who's a good pairing for you guys?
I would love to go out on the road with Living Color. I think that would be a really good show.
They're killing still right now, man. Their show's as big as ever.
Time. Yeah, I'd love to
play with them. Have you caught them on the last tour?
No, I haven't been out at all. I've been working like a crazy person. But I think the Living Color, I'd love to play with Extreme again. We did that in 2019. We toured with them over in England. That was a blast. UK, I should say, not just England. And it was any kind of those funk rock bands, Faith No More. I'd love to play with them.
Oh, yeah.
We fantasized about putting together this rock funk festival show that would happen once a year in the UK and England probably. And we put together some rosters of what that would be, but it hasn't happened yet. Maybe someday. We'll see.
That's right. You know what? So when I told you I got that, I came over and hung with you, caught that show in Wales. You guys were doing some gigs with Electric Boys.
Electric Boys are great for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure. That has that same kind of vibe. And
I love those guys.
it was killing me on that tour because every time we go over there, you're always like 2 weeks ahead of us or 2 weeks behind on different venues. We're all playing the same venues, and I selfishly, I just wanted to be at your shows, and I love playing, but well, for those of you that stayed up late in the UK, man, props to you guys. The UK and Prague, that's massive.
Thank you.
And again, if you did get here late, guys, you're fortunate enough, you can go to accesskevin.com and you can watch this thing from the beginning. And you can go to danreed.com and you can find out not only about the new stuff that's coming out for the network, but also you can go and take a look at Dan's incredible artwork. Follow him on his socials, man. Really good posts on your social media that show off the work. And
thank you.
Dude, we've been talking about doing this for 3 years. I'm really, really glad to have had the time. And and thank Rob Dacre and the Commune for providing this beautiful space.
Yes.
What a gift, man. I'm so proud, dude. And really, congrats to you and your family. And it's beautiful. You seem just very emotionally and physically healthy, which is what we all want for you.
It's all the, cigarettes, vodka,
yes.
McDonald's. It's just all the good. It's all the good stuff.
You've got the Keith Richards, model for healthy living. Is that it? It's worked for him, man. God, yeah, buddy. Well, Dan Reed, dude, thank you so much, man. And again, thank you, all of you that were participating in the chat. Andrew Gilling, man, thanks for being a supporter of the show. And Jules Carley, man, what a gift you are to the Dan Reed crew, man. That's a beautiful
Jules. Thing. Everything you do.
Awesome. Well, man, hug your family for me. I will definitely look forward to seeing you tomorrow afternoon, brother.
Yeah,
I'm gonna come in and can't wait to hear the stuff in person. So
cool.
Thanks to everybody. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Lots of good episodes coming up. All right, everyone. Take care. Have a good day. Be good humans and love on.